Hey everyone, John here, and welcome to the Deers Embroidery Legacy. I have a very special guest. This is Sammy Sampler. How you doing, Sammy?
I'm good, thanks. Hi, everybody.
Awesome, and Sammy is our head sampler here at the Deers Embroidery Legacy, and she is awesome at her job.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, and you've been at this a couple years with us for sure.
Yes, I've done it a few years now.
So, and she also is my son James' other half. I don't know, maybe better half. Well, you get.
We're being recorded.
We are being recorded. Okay, but anyways, I brought Sammy in because she is going to do a 101 Design Doodler video with us. And one of the reasons why is Sam has absolutely no experience digitizing, correct?
A few moments later.
Okay, you're right.
Never done it before.
Never watched any of my tutorials?
I have no idea what goes on behind the screens.
Okay, so, but at the same time, you have run samples and you do understand the basics of embroidery. You know what runs well and what runs poorly, correct?
Yes, I've watched many designs stitch out before, so I have
A foundation.
a foundation.
Foundation, so you do know what a running stitch is.
I do.
You know what a satin stitch is.
do.
You know what a fill stitch is.
I do.
You know how to use stabilizer, and you know what underlay is.
I do know these things.
Okay, and push and pull compensation, you understand that, how designs are supposed to line up properly when they're actually digitized.
Yeah.
So here's the reason why I was asking her all of those questions is because any person who wants to learn how to create a design, in my opinion, should start out exactly the way Sam has. You should run a machine. And years ago, when I used to train digitizers in-house, because we used to have a punch house, we called it that many years ago. Don't ask why, but it was actually called a punch house.
Okay.
But we had a punch house, and one of the things that I would ask the people who I was going to train to punch or digitize was, do you have any experience with embroidery? And if they said yes, I wouldn't hire them. To be honest,
Okay.
I wanted them starting from scratch. I didn't want to unteach them any bad habits, and I wanted them to have a foundation that was sort of a blank canvas, so to speak.
Slate.
Yeah, and you didn't really do anything else with embroidery before you started running samples, correct?
Know anything about it?
Because I
Started working.
can't turn back the hands of time, so I can't fire you now because you've okay. Anyways, I didn't want to because she is awesome, but. The whole idea behind being a good person who creates designs is having a foundation with actually running the machine. And that was the other thing that I told people was if I hired them, their first job for 3 to 6 months was...
Just watching the machine, and I can attest to it. I did this as well.
Yeah, so you need to watch a machine, you need to see how it runs because the best digitizers or the best design creators, in my opinion, are people who started out probably the exact same way you have and the exact same way Sam has.
Exactly.
So, now the next questions that I'm going to drill you with are, have you ever played with the Design Doodler before?
I've seen the app when it came out and drawn a few lines, but I don't know much about it.
Okay, so you haven't taken any of the beginning lessons, you haven't done any of that stuff. You haven't watched many of the videos other than the one that you were in, of course, where you...
Yeah, I watched my own.
Yeah, so I understand that, but you haven't created a design in the Design Doodler to this point.
Absolutely not.
Okay, so what I want to do is I want to take somebody who is a blank canvas, but who has experience running a machine, which is probably like most of you out there, and I wanted to lay down some foundational rules that I'm going to show Sam. I'm going to show her how we load a design, some of the little tricks that I'm going to do so that she will have, I guess, more of a recipe for success. And then I'm going to just let her go at it, and I'm not going to even watch what she's doing. So if you need me in an emergency to say, how do I get back onto the screen, or I forgot how to pan around or anything like that, I'll come and rescue you.
Okay.
But other than that, you're going to be on your own. So you ready to get started?
I'm ready to do it.
Okay.
Let's go.
So you ready, Sammy? I'm going to teach you some basics, and then we're going to let you fly all on your own. You all set? Okay, let's go. Well, are you ready, Sammy, to get started?
Let's do it.
Okay, so let's hit it. What we're going to do is look at the layout of the doodler, and this little, widget here is where you choose your tools, your shapes, and your properties. And within this widget, I have limited the amount of things you can play with. Most of the doodlers out there usually have a lot more tools within their widget. And if you go here, you can see that if I wanted to add all of these different tools, appliques, bean stitches, fill stitches, I could add those back into the widget and increase the amount of tools that are there. But I wanted to make sure that I kept this really simple, so I did limit the amount of tools. I took out all of the shapes except for one, so you have freehand mode, and I gave you 3 different stitch lengths, which will vary if I go to my stitch lengths. For the run stitch, I've given you 2 millimeters, 2.5, and 4.5. And I know you understand that a shorter stitch length will give you a more detailed line. The longer stitch length will give you more of a loose look to it, right?
Exactly.
I think we are okay with all of that because you've been running samples forever and a day. So there are your tools that you're going to use. Whenever you go and use any of the other tools within the software, so if you need to pan around, this little hand is a pan button, and if you have your artwork up and you need to pan somewhere within the screen, you can pan anywhere you want and let go, and then if you want to go back to your tool, you just click the center of the widget, and then your tool is activated again. So if I pan somewhere, I can just pan over, and then I can click back to the center, and I'm back onto the drawing tool, which is a running stitch. Now on the other side here, I have a 3D, which gives me simulated 3D embroidery. I have a fit to hoop. I have 1-to-1, 3-to-1, and 6-to-1. And I'm going to train you the old school way. You're going to learn how to doodle at either a 3-to-1 or 6-to-1 scale. And I'll show you what those mean when we bring in the artwork. I'm going to bring in the artwork and set it all up for you so that you're ready to go. But for next time, this is the way it's done. I'm going to load the backdrop. I'm going to bring in my image, and I know it's this one right here. It's the graphite image that we actually created. I'm going to bring it on the screen, and it is going to fill up the entire screen there. Now I can then right here select the backdrop. So I've opened it here, and I'm going to select it here. And when I click on the backdrop now, you'll see how it has the wireframe around the outside. Now I can also use my magnifying glass to zoom in or out on my mouse with my little wheel on it. And the reason why I kind of went to the outside is I have my artwork, it came in horizontally. You can move it around like this if you want to. So you can adjust your artwork with that little rotation at the top. Or when you go into your properties, this one here is for your palette, for your thread colors. And I'm just going to choose a nice bright red color for you. And that's the only one you'll need to stay on. Or let's make it a little lighter. And then here we have our properties right underneath. Because this is highlighted, my properties came up. Let's just undo that one so it's back to where it was. I'm going to select it again, and I can see now that the angle is set at 0. The easiest way to make sure that I rotate this perfectly is to type in, can you guess?
180.
Well, 90, half of that. 180 would just flip it all the way over, but hit 90 and hit enter, and it should come out perfectly straight.
Yeah, basic learning.
Yep, basic one. And then what we're going to do is we're going to resize this artwork before we start, because right now this is a 48-inch design, which we do not have a hoop that big, do we?
We do not.
No way. And I really don't want you doodling a 48-inch design or having to put that much work into it. So how about we do this so it's like maybe 5 inches, okay? So we'll do, or 4.75. Let's do 4.75 inches in height. And then I want to make sure, because this maintain aspect ratio is clicked, when I type in the top one and I enter, it'll automatically do both sides. If this was not checked, it would do them independently.
Okay, good thing to remember.
Yes, and if you ever do forget to do that, just undo it over here and click that button and redo it all over again. Now this for the left and right, you can set these both to 0, because right now on my screen here, there's a 0 mark here and a 0 mark right here on my screen, and it's showing that it's at 24. So if I hit 0 and 0, then it will bring it in so it's centered on screen. So there, my artwork is set up and I'm ready to go. But as you can see, it's really, really tiny, right?
It's hard to doodle.
It's going to be hard to doodle. So this is where I come into my fit to screen, will give me the full size. And that is the full size of the design. This one here, 1-to-1, this is the actual size of the design. So if you hit 1-to-1, this is giving you kind of a resemblance of a 4.75 inch design.
That's great.
Now this one here is 3-to-1. That means that it zoomed in 3 times the size automatically. And this one here is 6-to-1. So when I'm doodling, I'm usually toggling between those two. And that's it. I very, very rarely will use my magnifying glass to come in and sort of, toggle around, because my scales are changing, and now I'm at 764%. Now I'm at 360%. It's really hard to doodle if you are zoomed in and out of scales without knowing what the actual number is, because you want to train your brain to see stitches. So stay at 600% will allow you to see all of your doodling the same every time. Now, I have one little issue that I forgot to mention. Right now, I'm going to select my artwork again, so it's selected. I'm going to go to my properties, and there is a little tool here called opacity or opacity. Okay, opacity allows me to take this and kind of lighten it up so that what I'm looking at isn't quite so dark on screen. It makes it a little bit easier to actually doodle. So we'll keep it around there. That's what I would keep it at. But if you don't like that, you can always make it a little bit lighter or a little bit darker. The choice is yours. So I'm going to close that one back up again. And then I'm going to take my hand. So if I want to start somewhere, and I'm going to leave it up to you whether you want to do all of this window work in here, because this is a plant, and you chose this. You took a photograph of this.
I did. It's a plant that I've bought here.
Okay, so you
My plant.
This is your plant, this is your table, and you're going to doodle it, right? Okay, so what I'm in, you will have the photograph, and you're going to paint this in and all that good stuff, just like we did in the other video that we did together. So we're going to allow you to start somewhere on the screen. If I were going to start somewhere, you have to choose a starting point. I would probably start with, if you're going to do the windows, I'd probably do maybe the windows first. So I might start here and do all of this work in the windows, kind of leaving the plant portion of it out of it, because if you look at the windows, are they in front of the plant or behind the plant?
Oh, behind.
Behind it. So I'm going to look at this dimensionally, and I'd probably do that part first. And then I'd probably travel down the side of the plant, and I would probably go to the table, because the table's behind the pot. And then I would probably do the pot, because it looks like the plant is doing what?
Growing out of the
pot. So I'm choosing all of my pieces based on how it would react dimensionally, okay? Now, when you are actually doodling, so if let's say I'm going to do the table first, here I'm going to give you a basic 101 on doodling. And you might notice that at 6:1, you see a whole bunch of little squares. Can you see all the little squares there on the screen?
Sure,
Very tiny little squares. If I zoom in, you'll see even more. You can see all those little squares that are there. What I did with this, and let's just go back to 6:1, is I went to my actual settings, and I ended up going to my grid. Actually, first we have to go to metric. I'm in inches right now, so I'm going to go to metric, and I'm going to go to my grid, and you're going to see that my spacing on my grid is set at 0.5 millimeters. Okay? That means that every little square you see there, if you measured from one side of a square to another, that's 0.5 millimeters. And that's kind of important when you're learning to doodle at a 6:1 scale, because density, which I know you understand what density is, it's the stitches that cover the fabric. And on a satin stitch, you have all of your density, and you're actually having it so that your fingers are like stitches. So all of your fingers, when they have full density, are closed and you can't see my face. But if I spread the density apart, you can actually see my face. So you're actually decreasing the density as you spread your stitches apart. The tighter they are, the more density you have. So you don't want to make bulletproof embroidery, and you want probably a little bit of a looser techniques. So by setting this at 0.5 millimeters, that means that when you are doodling, and if I choose my brush, which all you have to do to start doodling is click on your brush and choose your stitch length, and let's just choose a 2 millimeter stitch length, and then I'll come down to the bottom of my table. So I'll maybe start right here, and then I will click the center to get out of my pan and back to my doodle brush. And then I'm going to take this, and I'm not going to do it right on the line, but I can create a line, and that line is a stitch. Okay? And if I were to take this stitch and start putting pieces like this, which is about that 0.5 millimeters apart, that would almost give me full coverage on a design, because that space, 0.5, is, I guess almost full coverage. Usually density to cover fabric is 0.4 millimeters apart. So if you were to do 0.4 millimeters at this, like this, that's going to give you full coverage on an actual garment. So when I'm actually doodling, if I am doodling and I'm coming like this, and I'm leaving space between these, and I can count that there's almost 0.7 or 8 millimeters between these two. This one has almost 2 millimeters, this one about 2 millimeters, this one about 1.5. If I were to count the space on the squares, I can kind of get an idea of how loose or how tight my stitches are going to be. This is looser, this is tighter, and that will give you that shading effect. If I'm doing an outline on something, if I want it to be a very fine detailed outline, I'll just do one pass of thread around something and that will give me a very detailed look. But if I want it to be a little bit bolder, I could come back over this and do 3 or 4 or 5 passes, a couple passes in one way, a couple passes the other, and just do this, and it's going to give me more of a bold line, okay? You never want to come in here and do this. I don't want to put that many passes because that's just going to give me a whole bunch of stitches all hammered into one place. So safely between 3 to 5 passes of thread to get nice thick lines, 1 to 2 to 3 passes of thread to get thinner lines, all at that 6:1 scale. So you kind of got the whole idea behind that?
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to back up for a second and I'm going to change this color for a second. Let's just change this to a gold because I want to show you something else that's really important. The doodler is kind of built so that you can continue the path and not get lost. So if I start here and I start to draw a line, and the second I let go and take my pen off the screen, it generated the stitch. Now because this little join to anchor point is on down here, it's grayed out, that means that it's highlighted. That means that if I start right back on that same dot, do you see how there's a red little dot around it now?
Yep.
As long as I start right back on that dot, I can continue my path and I can let go and I can start again, and it will start right where I left off.
That's a great feature.
So it actually, drops to the anchor point. If I get to a point off the screen, so if I'm over here and all of a sudden I'm running out of space, this is where I'll let go, I'll take my hand, I'll move it over, and then I'll go back to the center, and then I can pick right back up where I left off and continue drawing, okay? So you can just continue on as much as you want and just always pick up where that left off. Do you understand?
Yes.
Okay, so that gives you the doodle, and that way you won't have any unnecessary trims and jumps in your design. Because we all know that trims and jumps are what?
Frustrating.
Really, really frustrating, especially when you're running samples.
Very much so.
Okay, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to get rid of all that stuff that I just created, and I could use another tool to do that. I'm going to go back to a one-to-one screen so that we can make sure that we see everything there. And there, our design is ready. We're ready to doodle. I'm going to let you zoom into your 6:1. You'll pan down to where you want to start on your design. You'll start up with your tool. We'll make sure that it is a orange or red color maybe so that it's easy for you. Actually, let's do a dark green because that way you'll be able to see it. Let's just test this. That's maybe a little bit too dark. How about we try a blue? That actually looks pretty good. And that way you'll see the little red dot, okay? And if you don't want to see 3D, if it's a little too bold for you, you could always click off the 3D button and it will give you lines.
Okay, great.
So those are all the main features of the software. Do you have any questions, or is it pretty self-explanatory?
I have one question.
Yep, go ahead.
And maybe this will come with practice, but do you suggest outlining your picture first or at the end?
Actually, I know that you're asking that because you want to paint this, don't you?
I do.
I know for a fact that Sam loves to paint. So combining embroidery with painting is what we're going to do with this design, just like we did with that other video that we did where you spent like almost 4 hours painting that, and you did an incredible job. It only took me an hour and 40 minutes, by the way, to doodle the entire thing. No, just kidding. But you did a great job. So what I would suggest you do is doodle this design and finish it with the running stitches. And then after everything's done, we'll choose another color of thread, a lighter color of thread, And what you'll do then is you'll just outline, like we did with the other one, a very long stitch length, and you'll try to do 1 to 2 passes where you just give the basic shapes of the design, and you'll do it on top of the lines you created. So that way you'll know that you're not going outside of the finished stitches. Does it make sense?
Yes.
Okay. And then we'll sequence it so that those outlines are underneath of it, save it to the machine, and you can stitch the outline, take it off, paint it, and then pop it back on.
Perfect.
Cool. Okay, so I'm going to step away. If you need me, if it's an emergency, call me. I'll help you get back on the track. But other than that, I think you're ready to doodle.
Great. Thanks. I'm excited.
Hey everyone, well, Sammy Sampler ran her sample. Say that 10 times real fast as a tongue twister.
Sam sample, random sample.
Okay, this one's fine. Anyways, Sam did her sample and the proof is in the stitching. Now, Sam, what do you think of this design?
Being honest, I definitely did a little bit of overkill. It's definitely too much.
Yes, there's too much detail in there, but at the same time, it is not bulletproof on the back, so that's good.
That's big. I love it.
I think that it's wonderful when you actually have these, I guess, creative opportunities, we'll call them, because you see now what was done when you did it the first time. So I hate to tell you this, but we're going to do it one more time, and we're actually going to set up the monitors so that we're going to copy and slide this one over while you're working. So if you ever wonder if you have too much detail, you can
Check back to this one.
check back for that one, and I can guarantee the next one's going to be awesome.
Thanks.
Awesome. Okay, we're back, and we ran the sample one more time, or I should say you ran the sample one more time. And after the last attempt, Sam kind of cornered me and said, well, it was pretty dense. Why didn't you tell me? And yes, I did know that it was going to stitch out like that, because after 38 years, I can look at the screen, add a set scale, and pretty much tell. But the proof is in the stitching. So she ran the sample, she saw that it was dense, and I really do like it when somebody who's learning gets those results, because you know how to fix it. So you did digitize it again, and it looks much better this time. Now, we did talk right before she ran the sample, and she asked me, what would you change this time before she actually ran it? And I did break down. I told you a couple things I would change. And looking at it now, is there anything that you would do a little differently this time?
Yeah, I definitely think I would change some things. Now, having a second time run through, I would want to change a bit of the window panes. I used a similar stitch style throughout a lot of it.
Kind of a cross-hatching?
Yeah, so I think I would want to change my direction so it doesn't mesh together so much.
Looks like the light is reflecting.
Yeah.
Which is the kind of what we talked about. So you would potentially make all those changes?
Yeah, I think I should make those.
Okay, so that means take 3.
Take 3.
Okay, well, the third time was a charm. How do you think you did, Sam?
I think it went great. I'm so happy with it.
Yeah, and just so you know, that was her third attempt, and you did do it 3 times, which I was really impressed, because a lot of people have a hard time getting past that first one, which if you did admit was a little bit on the dense side, but that was a learning curve. And then you went to number 2, and number 2 is great, but number 3, I agree, is by far the best. So congratulations. Are you going to doodle some more?
I'm going to totally doodle some more. Hang out.
Awesome.